If anyone comes to you and doesn't bring this teaching, do not receive them into your house and do not welcome them. There are many theologians who teach that the problem in the days of the epistles of John was Gnosticism. I read about that many years ago in study books, and it's held to this day. The problem is and was Gnosticism. They said the problem with the churches that John was ministering to was Gnosticism. And Gnosticism can cover many aspects. But we're going to look into this business of Gnosticism. And also, today, theologians and churches relate 2 Thessalonians 2, 8-10 to the Antichrist who is supposed to be coming. We look at 2 Thessalonians 2, 8-10. Now, we're rather familiar with these verses, and most of us are familiar with it from the King James Version. Now, the secret workings of lawlessness are already at work. Only that which is now restraining will do so until that one is separated from their midst. And then the lawlessness in person will be revealed. The Lord will do away with that one by the breath of his mouth, and render that one inoperative with the sudden appearance of his coming. We have done videos on this, and we have related that it refers to not taking notice of any letter or any news coming from somebody that says it's happened. And it relates to the fact that they were before the Lord in their meetings. And you need to follow the video we've done on that if you want to know all the details about it. Now, this is about the lawlessness. And they consider that there will be the Antichrist at the end of the world. But of course they're overlooking 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. They're overlooking that. Anyway, I won't go into that detail because it's already done on a video. 1 John 4:2 says, "This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that agrees that Jesus, the Anointed One, has come in human form is from God." And then you have to go to the second epistle, and we see what is said here. The second epistle of John, verse 7. "This is because many who wander off the path have emerged in the world, and they don't agree that Jesus, the Anointed One, has come in human form." This is one who wanders off the path. This is one who is an anti-anointing. Every person who wanders off the path and says that Jesus has not come in the flesh is an anti-anointing. They have an anti-anointing spirit. Watch out for yourselves, that you don't lose what you have worked for, but that you will receive your full reward. Anyone who goes ahead and doesn't continue with the teaching of the Anointed One doesn't have God. Whoever continues with the teaching has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and doesn't bring this teaching, do not receive them into your house and do not welcome them, as the one who welcomes them is in partnership with their evil deeds. They are solemn words. We read that these people were in the churches that John was addressing, and that many of them had gone out to the world. But it does say, even though they had been in the churches, they were not of the beliefs of the gospel. They didn't follow the teachings of Christ. They already had their wrong doctrines and heresies that they were trying to promote in the midst of the saints of God. And they denied that Jesus of Nazareth was the Christ. They denied that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah. And indeed the Jews denied it. It was a Jewish matter. It wasn't a Gentile matter. The Gentiles never denied that Jesus of Nazareth had come in the flesh and was the Christ. They believed it all the time. It was a Jewish matter. Judaism is Gnosticism. The Gnostics need to admit it and to understand it. That when Gnosticism is mentioned in relation to the churches in Asia Minor, it had to do with Judaism. There is a wonderful book by a woman of God called Elizabeth Dilling. Now, I read her downloads from her book as one of the first things I looked into when I started getting onto the subject and understanding about Judaism. She was a Christian, married, and a lawyer. And for some reason, she and her husband went across to Russia to look into the Bolsheviks. And it was from that experience she wrote the book. You see, the great heresy of Gnosticism, which nearly swept Christianity from the earth in the early centuries, is admittedly Kabbalistic. This is what the Jewish Encyclopedia says. The practiced elements of Gnosticism were derived from Jewish speculation. It is a noteworthy fact that heads of Gnostic schools are designated as Jews by the early church fathers. Now, in relation to the Masoretes, we need to realize that these Masoretic Jews, who had descended from the Jews in Babylon through the female line, were not really Jews. No Jew was ever admitted as a Jew, I call them Jews, through the female line. It was always the male. You read the Bible. It's always through the male. It's not through the female. And these Masoretes were from the female, and they had intermarried. The first Masoretes sneaked in to Palestine in AD 87, and they set up a colony and began opposing Christianity and working on their manuscripts to produce the Hebrew text that exists today, with all the points added after 1,000 years investigation, that Christians are taught to believe and learn, and taught that it is the real Hebrew. It is not the real Hebrew at all. It's the Masoretic Hebrew. They had corrupt manuscripts as well. They hated Christ, and Christians were already, they hated Christ and Christians, and were already around the 7 churches of Asia. How could John, so here it is that John is saying of their beliefs that Jesus Christ did not come in the flesh. John knew exactly what they were saying. And were there any of these people who did ever belong to the true believers? No. This is what Berkhoff, a top scholar, Christian and German, has said of 1 John 4, verse 3. Every spirit that denies Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, that was mentioned by John the Apostle, was because John opposed the Jewish heresy of the Kabbalah, that was mysticism, and they were the Antichrist who followed the Kabbalah. This is serious. Most people don't know this. I'm quoting from people who know what they're talking about. I'm quoting from the Jewish Encyclopedia. So that's why John wrote the books he did, the epistles. Was because John opposed the Jewish heresy of the Kabbalah that was mysticism, and they were the Antichrist who followed the Kabbalah.